Hey guys, and welcome back to G's Autos. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, what can I say? The title of this video says it all. Took the car down to EFI Logic to catch up with Tim and Peter. The plan was to do all the ECU install, which we are currently going through, and the clutch upgrades and flywheel and all the typical service stuff. But as we delved into it, we did find quite a few problems with the Starlet in the front end. So as you go through this video, you'll see all the problems that we ran into. So it's turned into a bit of a major overhaul for the car, to say the least. So I must say big thanks to Tim and Peter. Thanks for your help, guys. I really appreciate it. And yeah, watch the video, guys. This is part 1, so stay tuned for part 2 as we get further through the upgrades on the car. Anyway, guys, enough out of me. I hope you liked the video. If you do, give it a big thumbs up. If you want to see more content on the Starlet, please subscribe to the channel. That would be greatly appreciated. Anyway, guys, enough out of me. I hope you enjoy the video, and I'll see you on the next one. Alright guys, so Tim has just started on the Starlet. So he's just taken out the battery, taken out the air intake, starter motor's out, gearbox cables are out, so we're just going to lift that up now and we'll start taking everything else off so we can get into this clutch and flywheel.
Back in the early days of COD.
He's filming, mate.
He's got to do it again.
We could have nearly saved that.
Oh, that's probably my top-up oil. So apart from doing the clutch, there are a few little maintenance issues we need to take care of on the Starlet. So we do have tie rods, steering boots, front crank seal, which we'll get into later on how I actually caused that to happen. Also, there was seals on the gearbox, Tim.
Yeah, with the drive shaft seals. This one's leaking, but normally preventative maintenance, if we're pulling the gearbox out, we've got to pull the shafts out.
Yep.
So we'll be putting seals in it regardless.
Yep.
So, but this one's leaking a little bit on this side, so let's do it while we're in there.
Yep, and so yeah, it's also getting a service, plugs, or new oil, filter, and we'll replace the oil in the gearbox as well. I think it's been a little bit of time since I've had that done. So actually, I like to get it done more regular than what. Yeah, I just like to do that because I do a lot of Ks. So that'll be part of today's video as well.
Excellent.
And the other thing was the rocker cover gasket.
Yes, it was
So,
leaking.
yeah.
Right.
So
I don't want to be that guy, but you know, someone's installed the motor back to front in your car too.
oh
It's instead of being north-south like a real
yeah,
car.
yeah. It's
Somehow, yeah.
it's a pretend one.
It's like those funny looking Honda things.
So one of the things you've got to take out of these bolts here that hold the sandwich plate on between the gearbox and the block. So they definitely need to come out.
So we'll pull both drive shafts out. We'll move on to removing your front or your rear engine mount.
Yep.
And your pitch stop mount. We'll get them both out of the way.
Yep.
We'll put the A-frame on the engine to hold it up before we remove those.
Yes.
And the gearbox should slide hopefully out of the way.
All right. So while we're under here, we just found that this rubber boot seal on this CV shaft is perished and there's a split in the top. So we're going to go through and, as you can see, it's all just dried and yuck. So we're just going to go through and replace that as well. All right. As you can see, to get to that rear pitch mount, there were 2 bars that come off. We're about coming off here. They're running off here, and then we've also had to drop that exhaust off to get to those. So what's the go now, Tim? What's the?
We'll go back down. We'll put our A-frame on to support the engine.
Yep.
We'll pull the final bolts out of pitch stop. We'll pull our front rear engine mount, whichever end it is. It's confusing, these cars. The engine's the wrong way. We've pulled our tie rod ends out. We'll drop our ball joints, and that'll allow us to remove the shafts, swing the struts out of the way, and we'll drop the box on it. Well, we won't drop the box. We'll slowly lower the box carefully.
Oh, if need be, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Look, if Pete's anywhere nearby, we can drop it on.
We can drop it. Sounds good. Now the A-frame's on there to hold up the engine, because basically once all those mounts are taken off, there's nothing really holding it in place securely. So that's now on, and that's now attached to the hook, and it's been wound up, so it's holding the weight now. Tim, is that it's got all the weight now, hasn't it?
It's got most of the weight, yeah.
Yep.
So we'll most probably be up and down a few times to lower the back end of the engine down, so we can slide the box out, and then we'll get it onto the floor, and we'll start investigating what's in there from there.
Beautiful. All right, so I lied to you before. Last time when the car had a service, the tie rods were actually done. The rack ends are what we're going to replace. So they're pretty knackered. So we'll replace those along with the boots. And yeah, so the tie rods, all good. No need to swap them out. So just removing these drive shafts out. Now, Tim, I know some people will struggle to get these out because they do get jammed in there fairly hard.
Like that.
So what do you typically use if you've got one that's a bit on the tough side?
Some of these earlier model cars had a lip on them. If you have a look there, where you can actually tap the CV joint.
Yep.
Some of them don't. Because we're replacing this,
Yep.
I must have been a little bit too rough on it, but
Yep.
I'm just tapping with the
Yeah,
hammer
we're
and
not
a
too
cold
worried
chisel.
about that, no.
No, if it was something we were reusing, there is special tools you can get in there that attach to slide hammers. They'll slide up the back side of it and you can knock them out that way.
Okay.
It is a bit more difficult on some of these gearboxes that you can't quite get in there.
And plus we've got the luxury of the hoist as well. So if
Absolutely.
you're doing these at home, I have seen they can be fairly difficult to remove once they're really jammed in there.
Absolutely.
All right, so we just found something else to add to the list. This is the rear pivot mount for the gearbox, and as you can see, let's see if I can. That rubber in there is completely cactus, so that will need to be that mount there needs to be fixed up. So yeah, so we'll add that to the list. All right, so we just found another problem to add to the list. As you can see, that mount there, the gearbox mount, shouldn't be two-piece, so that's another one we'll need to add to the list. Okay, so Tim's just lowering the gearbox out now, so that came out nice and easy once all the final mounts were removed. Alright, so the clutch and flywheel have been removed. Now we've noticed there's a bit of an oil leak coming from the back of the sump. So while the car is all apart, Tim's going to reseal the sump. It's just leaking out through here. Going to put the right sealant in there and seal it up properly so we can stop that leak. Now off camera before, Tim and I were just having a chat about taking the clutch and flywheel out, and you made a pretty good point about being careful when you do take the
110%, especially if you, mate, it's not light. That's there is 13 odd kilos.
Yep.
Guy I went to TAFE with isn't in the industry anymore. He had undone the bolts out of the end of the crankshaft that hold the flywheel. It didn't stay on the dowel. As he bent over, the flywheel got him across the top of the skull. Didn't kill him, but certainly messed him up. So it's one of those things. While you can be complacent about it, you've got to be careful.
Yep.
It's serious stuff.
Yeah, so we just wanted to point that out, just a little safety tip there for anyone who's never done this kind of stuff before and they are looking to do it. Just be conscious of that. So so what we're going to do now, we're actually going to take a look at the clutch that came out of it and just have a quick look at it. So this is a standard factory clutch for the Starlet, and it was getting a little bit low there, Tim.
You can see here we're down nearly to our pop rivets. So this material is actually pop riveted to a centre plate. Centre plate has springs in behind here that we can't actually see. They move backwards and forwards to take up vibration and torsional. But these rivets are getting very close to the top of our friction material. Once it gets to the friction material, was worn away to these rivets, it'll start to wear into the metal, which is exactly what we don't want.
So before we actually put the new clutch in, we will be having a chat about the new clutch while we've chosen that particular clutch, and we've also got the lightened flywheel to go in there to replace the original factory one. So we're just making a list now of bits we need to replace in regards like the gearbox stuff and some other bits and pieces we found that are actually need to be repaired while we've got everything apart. So we're just going to go through and make that list now, then we'll get back to doing some more stuff on this. All right, so we just got the two clutches lined up here. Obviously, the one that came out of it is there, and that's our replacement. Now, Tim, from memory, tell me if I'm incorrect, but we picked up a clutch that'll take up to about 240 horsepower around that.
See, the horsepower ratings are always a bit funny. A lot of them now will go away from rating horsepower and more so torque.
Yep.
And then that torque application is rated versus the weight of the vehicle. So this thing weighing, next to nothing, it will handle a lot more torque than, say, if we were to put the comparable clutch into a Commodore or something.
Yeah, and I mean, we're not going 300-400 horsepower. We're still working through what we're actually going to be doing with the engine. I've got that other engine as well, so we've got a few ideas that we can work with. But looking at this original clutch, it's fairly worn. Got my money's worth out of it. Now this clutch we've got here, the new one, you mentioned that's an organic clutch. So there's different types of...
we can have different materials, so you'll see this is an organic material with a rope weaved through it like the original one had.
Yep.
We can then move to take a bit more load. We could move to a ceramic or a metallic type material.
Yep.
The issue with those, they're basically a switch. They're in or out.
Okay.
There's no slip, there's no nicety to driving.
Yep.
Whereas this being a street car, you drive it every day. It really needs to be this sort of clutch. When we wanted to make more power, things like that, we can go to a twin plate with two of these. That Barra Falcon that we're going to do a feature on, it runs twin organic clutch from the same manufacturer in Adelaide. And it's a really nice thing to drive on the streets and will hold everything that car's going to make. It'll hold the 800 horsepower.
Yep.
So that's why we've just made the decision to go to an organic clutch in this, it is nice to drive. Where we've picked up more clamp load though, if you look at the two clutches, you can see what they have done for us. I can't say I've done it. The guys at Extreme Clutches, shout out to them, have moved the pivot point further one way or the other in comparison to the factory clutch. So what that then does is you've got to picture it like a seesaw. If we move our fulcrum point, we're actually going to get a lot more load for the same size clutch onto it. So that's what we want. We want more bite.
So it was about 50% more clamping pressure or power for it?
From memory, Yep, I must have got the paperwork in there to look at.
So we couldn't go too nuts because this is my daily driver. And I'm doing, for those who don't know, I do over 1,000 Ks a week. So it's not something where we could put something crazy in there. Plus we're not chasing the crazy horsepower either. So this is going to be a nice streetable car. And we also got the lightened flywheel. I've never put a lightened flywheel on a car before, so I said, hey, let's chuck one on, and I'm just curious to see how it goes, because some people say yes, people say no to lightened flywheels, so I just wanted to see myself what.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not a ridiculous amount. We were both just both flywheels earlier. It's not a ridiculous amount lighter. So I believe it'll still be nice to have that inertia to take off.
Yep.
When you get into our competition type stuff, we will run on some of our bigger LS ones, we'll run 3 plates the same size as that to get the clamp load and the amount of friction we want. They're an absolute nightmare to take off because they have no weight in the clutch whatsoever.
Yep.
The car won't want to hold revs and things like that. Whereas I believe this is going to be still a really nice combination.
Yep.
There's guys out there a lot smarter than me coming up with the numbers that they need to make this drive. So I'm very excited to see how it's going to steer after this.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, looking at these clutches here, from my understanding, just tell me if I'm wrong, normally when you go up to more horsepower, higher horsepower applications, they don't actually rivet these on, they're actually pressed. They're a glue press, or they're pressed on without the rivets?
No, everything will still be riveted.
Okay.
Right up to, again, like if you wanted to go and look at, say, again, that Falcon out there, it's an 800 horsepower rated clutch. Again, I'm talking in horsepower, not torque.
Yep.
But it's still riveted when we're going with organic material. In like our door slammers and things like that, they're a totally different beast again as to how we slip those and things like that. So I probably wouldn't even go into describing those for most people.
Yeah.
But again, in our sprung button type stuff that we run, I don't personally like it on the street because it is a switch. It's on or off. You can't slip it because you've got to imagine you've got metal instead of an organic material here.
Oh, okay.
So I don't have one in the workshop to show you, but so instead of this area here being organic, it's metal. What happens is this wears away faster than the clutch plate if you're slipping.
Right, okay.
So the last thing you want to do is slip a sprung button clutch.
Yep.
Back in the bad old days, that's all we had.
Yep.
was to hold the horsepower, but now we've got some great guys at Extreme Clutches here in Australia that put together some good stuff.
Yep.
And it makes it nice and streetable. So
Yeah, and just for those who don't know, Extreme is an Australian company. I think they're based in South Australia.
Adelaide.
And so we were happy to use them. So and they've got excellent feedback for their products, good quality products. So we were happy to use an Australian company, which we're trying to do as much as possible with things that we do to the car as we move along. All right, so we've got those bits, and as we discovered, we've found a few extra issues with the car. So we are also, Tim's just ordered new slotted rotors for the front and some juicy Bendix brake pads. And as we went through, and as we went through, we've got a few issues there with bits and pieces we found wrong with it as we go. So yeah, we'll sort that out as we go. So we're just moving on to the harness side of things. So we're just having a look at where all the original factory wires and everything. So what's the process you work through here, Tim? Like clean slate?
it's very dependent on the application as to whether, like what we're doing here would be, the best way to describe it, it's not a piggyback, but it will be similar to a piggyback because we're not going to retain the factory ECU for any functionality whatsoever.
Yep.
But we are going to retain the original fuse box, the original fuel pump relay, albeit with bigger wiring leading down to the back for the bigger fuel pumps. And things like that. So what I'm looking at here is what is it integrated to and where are we going to pick up our power sources and things like that from. So from here we'll start plucking the harness apart. We'll run our own independent one for the ECU to the engine. So we'll be looking for crank signal, throttle position, inlet air temperature, idle air control, injectors, things like that. But again, we'll pick it up from the factory box. So if you're ever somewhere away, it'll just be a standard wiring diagram will fix the car.
Okay.
Which is the ideal thing.
Yep.
Yeah, if it was a full build, like our Target Tasmania deals that we do, that comes with not a handwritten anymore, we do them in CAD for our wiring diagrams, and it's a hole from the front to the rear of the vehicle.
Yep.
is done again. So we try to keep nothing in it that lets a car down.
Yep. And eventually we will be doing a coil on plug conversion.
Absolutely.
We're not doing it this time around because we've got a fair bit already on our plate for this week. So that will be at another time. We will do that conversion. We'll do a video showing that as well. So at the moment, we're just going to go through and start detangling the mess, I suppose you could say, and go through the process.
Yeah, it's exciting.
All right, let's get into it. All right, so here we have the harness. Tim has removed the harness out of the car. Now, that's a bit of a mix there, Tim, with engine stuff and other bits.
And other bits. A lot of Japanese manufacturers do the same. So this is running wipers and some lights, things like that inside of the vehicle as well. So
okay.
What we'll do is we'll pluck out what we're not going to use anymore, so anything that was engine related.
Yep.
But we'll retain the rest of it. So we've got starter motor, alternator, control, things like that. So we'll retain all of that. But the stuff that, your throttle position and all that we need for the Haltech, we'll rob that and run it over to our Haltech.
Beautiful. All right, guys, so we ran into a slight issue with the new flywheel, the lightened flywheel. So as you can see, well, the problem was the PCD for the factory flywheel bolts was different to the one that was supplied. So we've actually had this one, we dropped this one off up the road to a machine shop, and they've machined in the new holes to match the PCD of the factory one. So that's all good. There's no issues there. There's enough meat there. It's not going to fly off or do anything stupid. That's all good. So we can now fit that. Now the other problem we ran into, these are the ARP bolts. Now these are the same as 4AGE. Now these are slightly longer, just a fraction longer than the factory bolts. So these are actually, 6 of those are up the road at the same machine shop, and they're being machined down ever so slightly, just so we don't run into any issues of them going longer than what they need to be and causing any damage there to the crank. So we've overcome that crisis, which is really good, because I'm really curious to see how this lightened flywheel, how it makes a difference to the drivability of the car. All right, guys, Tim is now working on the Haltech harness. So he stripped out what we don't need. So Tim, there were 6 injectors and 6 igniters, is that correct?
That's right. So there was 6 yellow, 6 blue. That's just Haltech's colouring for it. So we've stripped out the extra ones we don't need. We're going to run, because of the plans we've got with the vehicle, we're going to run 4 injector wires. We could get away with 2, just running batch fire that the car factory originally ran.
Yep.
And only the single wire for the coil. But because we're going to try some stuff later down the track with moving to sequential injection, we're going to run a crank trigger and a cam trigger, so we can run both. And we're also going to look at running individual coil on plug because we want to get some RPM out of the new deal. We're going to run all this out there now, terminate it nicely, put some weatherproof Deutsch plugs on it.
Yep.
And at that point we can then move on later down the track. We don't have to rewire the whole car again.
Fantastic. All right, now this is what's left of the original harness from inside the engine bay. So all the wires we don't need have all been stripped out, which I'll show you shortly. So this is what we're left with. Far less than what we started with, that's for sure. Now this is what we took out, well I should say Tim. So all of that there is not required. And I must say he did make that look very easy. To me it was like watching algebra, but for someone who's done this over and over again with a lot of different vehicles, certainly did make it look easy.